right, everybody. Welcome to Unfiltered podcast. We're so glad you guys are joining us today. I have a special guest with me today. It is a good pastor friend of mine from Life Point, Lebanon Church. His name is Kelly Rhoades, and we are excited to have you, Kelly, be a part of this podcast. We are going to talk about a particular subject, but first, just go ahead and say hi and let the listeners know a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Kelly Rhoades. Like you said, I'm pastor of Life Point Church here in Lebanon. We just celebrated 14 years of ministry. We started back in 2010, and someone said, "Hey, you think this is a very good time to start a church in the middle of a recession?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." So 14 years we've been going, and God's been blessing and doing some powerful things. Married to Bridget, she's my wife. We pastor together down here. She not only does our children's ministry, but she walks and serves alongside me, and so we're super excited about that. We've got 4 kids, and just love them to death, from 14 to 20, and so we're busy all the time. But man, life is good. We're enjoying living in a sweet season right now.
And it's fun pastoring, isn't it, in today's society?
You know what, man? It is fun pastoring. There's some big challenges out there, but man, we've seen God do some really cool things lately. So yeah, it is fun pastoring. Some days I don't say that. Today I am.
There's a lot of days we just want to quit and give up, but then we really know, hey, we're called to fight and keep standing firm, and that's what I love about you, man. You and I've we've really gotten on the same page about some of the social and political things and what's going on. And it is hard to talk about. It's hard to address and not be offensive. But guess what? The things that Jesus said was very offensive to a lot of people, but he didn't care because he was speaking truth.
He was speaking life, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I want to discuss with you is I want to talk a little bit about the incident that happened at the Stronger Men's Conference. What I want to make sure and preface to all the listeners or whoever's watching this or who's going to watch it is this is not us trying to drudge something back up that I feel like has just it's kind of gone away a little bit from my opinion. I haven't seen nothing, but so I don't want to drudge it back up and bring more drama to the situation, but I do want to discuss what happened and talk about the process in which has taken place, because you and I were going to do a podcast the week before. Matter of fact, we recorded it, and then the next day, more information came out. The whole service that John Lindell did on his Wednesday night, came out the next day, and we need to back this train up and wait a little bit longer before. Because, one of the things that I've been teaching on when it comes to complaining and criticism and all that is so many people believe the very first thing they see or read or they hear. They don't wait for information. And you and I both thought that this was resolved the day of the conference.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't want to dig everything back up, and I don't think we have to at this point, because I think most people know, but yeah, dude, I was there. And I'll just tell you, whenever everything happened, I walked out of that place and I had so much respect for Lindell. I had so much respect for Driscoll, because I thought we have just seen a wonderful example of biblical reconciliation, of brothers coming together. And man, I'm telling you, we took like 24 guys to that conference. We had these conversations after it was over, and we talked about, hey man, I mean, this is the way you do this. And man, I had guys that have had long-standing bitterness and division calling people up and saying, hey, listen, I can't keep going forward with what I just saw. We need to resolve this. And so I literally saw mending of relationships, got to hear that kind of thing happen on the phone. I even took time to talk to somebody that I was at odds with, because I was inspired by the way these guys came together in such a Christ-like fashion. And so whenever it blew up and hit the fan I knew there was going to be controversy because of what instigated everything. Yeah. But then whenever it came out, the conflict between the two after this, I was shocked.
I know,
because what I saw, and I sent the video recording to you, and I guess it's posted out there some places. I haven't seen it get near as much traction as the other stuff, but I sent the video to you. Yep. What I saw was this beautiful biblical reconciliation. There was humility, there was honor, there was a coming together. And man, I was like, that we need more of that in the church. Like I told my guys, watching that was worth the entire price of admission.
Mm-hmm.
And then there you go.
So let me just briefly, just in case if there is somebody living under a rock, or maybe they're just not in our world of what happened. Bottom line, Stronger Men's Conference led by James River Church. Pastor John Lindell had a guest speaker, Pastor Mark Driscoll from Trinity Church out of Arizona. Had him come in and speak. The opening act was a little bit different. It was probably a little too far, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people agree with that. And Pastor
I'd be
Mark,
one of those guys. Yeah.
Yep. So Pastor Mark kind of, well, he called it out and said, here's an observation. This is a Jezebel spirit, very evil. The pole was Azra, was from Azra, and
Yeah.
yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, Pastor John Lindell stood up and said, that's enough. You're out of line. He walks off stage. He said, yep, I can receive that. Walks off stage. They get backstage. They talk. They come back out on stage, and they basically discuss what took place. They supposedly used Matthew 18. Everybody thinks the thing's resolved. And then on Wednesday, bam, a bomb goes off, and Pastor John Lindell gets in front of the whole church and begins to what he calls step 3 of Matthew 18, and that is to call Mark Driscoll out from the stage. And not just from the stage, but then he also sponsored a ton of, he did a huge sponsor on the message and sent it out to everybody. He sent it out to all the strong, anybody that is in their email base, it went to them as well, which personally, I believe there is a weird agenda here that I did not like at all. I find it very strange. I find it, I do not find it very biblical in that regard personally. I think there was a lot of things that were discussed from the stage that was way too deep into detail. And, but again, this is my opinion. It's very difficult today to decipher the right way when it comes to biblical stuff, because we are literally trying to, we're trying to read and project something that was created perfect, and we are imperfect people trying
100%.
to communicate a perfect message. And guess what? We mess it up all the time. And I think a lot of people need to take into account, let's have grace for everyone, okay? Let's have grace for everybody involved, no matter what. That's my thing, is, how this whole thing goes down. So I just want to hear your thoughts specifically, not necessarily about what took place at the men's conference, but really what took place afterwards with how this thing was handled. You have more insight because, you have someone that goes there that I don't really want to say if you don't want to say, but you have somebody that that goes there that you're close to that is experiencing this from a whole nother level. So would you share with me a little bit what your thoughts are with this whole message and how it was done? I mean, Kelly, here's the biggest thing for me that really drew up a red flag is when we pre-recorded the podcast to talk about Stronger's Men's Conference.
Right.
That was the title, something about Stronger's Men's Conference. That video was flagged on YouTube and blocked from the owner of Stronger Men's Conference. That's the email I got. I have the email still. And it basically said, hey, you can still go ahead and post this if you want to, but know that everything that you say, the data is going to be tracked. The people who watch it, who watches it, all the gender. I mean, every little data that YouTube can gather from people's IP addresses, it is going to go to James River, and they are tracking everybody when it comes to this subject. And that alarmed me massively. What do you think?
Yeah. Man, there's a lot here, and so I do have. I don't attend James River Church. We go to a lot of James River functions. I will go to more James River functions. I just full disclosure. My son's a James River college student, and we're super proud of him, and would send him back there again. So, but because of those things, I don't represent James River. I'm not speaking for my son. These are my opinions and my opinions only.
There you go.
I say all that because after I've heard more of what was happening as a result of the negative feedback from the internet, a lot of it seemingly, or at least in some way, fueled by Driscoll. And I'm not trying to necessarily take sides here. I'm just trying to tell my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
James River Church experienced some terroristic threats, like serious terroristic threats, to the point where not just calling up threats to the church or to the pastors, which I don't know. I'm a pastor. I've received threats before. I've had different things happen because people do crazy things with pastors, and you've probably had that same kind of thing happen, Jason. It's part of it. But I'm talking whenever 19-year-old girls who are single 19-year-old females that are just working the phones are getting threats on their life, and then someone goes and stalks them on social media. They find out their family and where they're at and where they're located, and it gets real like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a different level, because
Yep.
this devolved from, I don't think this kind of thing should happen in church, to now we're looking at terroristic threats. We're looking at and seemingly legitimate threats to someone's personal safety. That's not cool. And
No.
so whenever you see and hear, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to betray anybody's confidences, but there wasn't just like one guy that did that. They've taken up and had to take up the alarm for physical safety and protection of their facilities and their people. And so at first, when you told me, that they flagged our video, I was like, what in the world's going on here? And
Mm-hmm.
then when I found out the extent of how evil supposedly Christian men, or conservative men, or whatever you want to call it, have responded in the name of right, justice, some of them in defending Mark Driscoll, I think I understand. I just, to be completely honest, if someone was going to threaten my daughter and my wife and my children and her brothers and sisters with bodily harm, I'd want to know who watched that video.
So here's a question
Straight
for
up.
you. You told
Yeah.
me that when they answer the phones at James River, they give their first and last name. Is that true?
No, I don't think if I did say that, I don't remember saying that, but
Okay. Well, how would
I
they
think
get
they say,
her?
I think
How would they
I
get
think
her
so.
information? Her last name. How would they find? How would they stalk the girl on the phone if they don't have a last name?
Again, I think you had a very sweet, because she is a super sweet girl, but somewhat trusting young lady who, in course of just general conversation, gave her name. James River doesn't train. Hey, no one's calling him, hey, Kelly Rhoades, welcome to James River. That didn't happen.
Okay,
But
good.
it's probably
Because I was
something
going to say, I mean, there's the first
yeah.
mistake.
Yeah, that's
Never,
not
calling
what
a call
James River
center.
did.
Yeah. But
But
they
I
should
mean,
be
who do you
teaching
want?
these young kids never to give out their last name. Here's the other thing I want to talk about.
Yeah.
We don't really know, so something I've learned is I've always tried to defend the person that's not in the room. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people not in the room in this conversation because,
Yeah.
John Lindell's not here, Mark Driscoll's not here, all these people are not here. But I always think about this whole thing with, the threats. I get it. It's terrible. It should never happen. It's evil. It's not godly.
No question.
No doubt about it. My thing is, though, we don't know who these people are that are calling. These could be just idiots out there that are really not even Christians at all, that just want to stir the pot and put fear into people, or just
Absolutely.
be, a-holes about it is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
And so to say, that these guys, we don't know that they're Christians. And sure, I guarantee you there are many that probably stuck up for Mark Driscoll. But I will tell you this. I had somebody in my church one time get offended by something I said from the stage when it came to Black Lives Matter, and there was a black family a mixed black family in our church, a racial couple, interracial, and they love our church. They love me. We love them. No issues whatsoever. But this person was offended at what I said. They tapped the 16-year-old girl on the shoulder, and Kelly, you and I have already had this conversation because I called you immediately to say, what are your thoughts? Yeah. And they said, hey, I want to apologize on behalf of the pastor. I think a lot of people do that with good intentions, and that's probably what a lot of people were doing. Oh, I'm calling to defend Mark Driscoll. He's, whatever. And, Mark Driscoll isn't out there creating an army. I don't believe Mark Driscoll's out there calling his people saying, let's call James River and make all these threats and let's do all. I don't think Mark Driscoll or his team at all have done any of that. I think a lot of people just take it up on themselves to try to defend something they believe in, and they pin it on a person because it gives them more validity. It gives them more value when they say, I'm calling on behalf of Mark Driscoll.
I think there's a lot of problems that can be chalked up to overzealous idiots doing something that no one would think was wise. That sounds like most of the internet. I mean, honestly,
yeah, you're right.
But at the same time, if that kind of thing is going, like if I would have went to your church and said something that would have offended that family, that would have inspired someone to step up and not say I'm sorry. That was there was very misguided, and you know where I stand on that. But
Mm-hmm.
say they would have, threatened, hey, do you mind if I go lynch pastor for you, or something to that effect? Um, I would, even though I didn't know them and wasn't responsible for their reactions,
Mm-hmm.
if I thought they were doing that out of some sort of allegiance to me, I would come out and say, "Don't do that. Don't do that. That's dumb."
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
I think
Like,
that's what you're saying with Mark is, hey, you should have come out
yeah,
and said, hey, guys, this is between us and them, which I understand that to a degree. I mean, I think the problem is when we're not in somebody's shoes, it's really easy to say for both of us to talk about it from what I would like to call the cheap seats. When you're not the one going through it, it's easy
yeah,
from the outside to be telling everybody what they should be doing. But when you're actually going through it, you probably got all these advisors and all these psychological people and, everybody that's reading situations. They're, I forget what the exact word is when you have, you're trying to do damage control when it comes to media and different things. You probably hire somebody to do that. I guarantee you
hmm
both of these guys have done that because they're very well known, and everybody's getting
yeah.
different opinions to do and handle things a certain way. I just it is a shame no matter what. The threats and the different things that are taking place is a shame. That these guys, to me, and I think I really do believe, Kelly, that John Lindell brought that on himself by giving that message. I mean, reading very intimate, and I say intimate because it's between two people, text messages, phone conversations, to me was not necessary to give an overview of what took place. I'm okay with an overview, but when you start getting into the details of the
The details. Yeah.
conversation, now you've taken it to another level, which in my mind tells me you know about narcissism.
I
You
do.
know it very well. And the tendencies that I saw in Pastor John Lindell, I'm not saying he is by any means. I'm saying the things that I picked up in that message were narcissistic, that's a hard word to say, narcissistic tendencies of control, manipulation, love bombing. We love Pastor Mark, but he's broken, and if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't be where he is. But we love you. By the way, here's the messages he gave. By the way, we love you. That kind of behavior, that's love bombing.
I would probably have a different perspective on that, but let me. I think this might be helpful, because I think there's another example that I think was a really great biblical example of how to deal with something like this. I don't know how familiar you are, because I know you and I haven't talked about this, or how familiar your audience is with the big controversy surrounding IHOP and Mike Bickle.
Yeah, I've not heard anything.
Okay, well, in International House of Prayer, man, this is an amazing ministry. I think since 1996 or 1999, they've had 24 hours of continuous prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Bickle has become world renowned in his teaching on prayer, his teaching on the end times and prophecy, and so this is no small following, but certainly not as much exposure as a Mark Driscoll or a John Lindell,
Right.
but enough exposure that he has guys like Francis Chan that come and preach. Well, it came out this summer that that Bickle was being accused of having these affairs with various women, and there's a lot of deeply disturbing prophetic abuse, and it's a consistent story that's been shared now for literally decades by not just one or two women but many women. And in the middle of all this, Francis Chan, who's friends with Bickle, is supposed to go preach at his church and speak, and all these accusations come out. And according to Sam Storms, Sam and Francis Chan went to Bickle's house to confront him personally, face to face. Matthew 18, that's the first step of Matthew
Mm-hmm.
18, and Bickle wouldn't see him. So he refused to answer the door of his home. And so rather than going to the church that had paid for him to come and speak, rather than going and paid to fly him there, and rather than going and addressing that and addressing the church who's looking for leadership, they're looking for something, because IHOP was in the middle of all this damage control. They did hire a legal firm to kind of cover their tracks and try to take care of things. What Francis Chan did in that moment was he went to the prayer room and he prayed. He said, "I'm not going to make this about me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do what I think everybody needs to do, and I'm going to go to the prayer room and pray and allow God to honor us, to handle us." And ultimately, what I believe that needs to happen in these types of situations is that we need to follow biblical directive. which is what I thought initially happened
Right.
whenever we saw that on Saturday.
Right.
But there's a precedent, because the fact of the matter is there's going to be many things that happen in life where we don't agree on something. So how do you handle that?
Yeah.
You know, do I have to? Our modern culture now says if we don't agree, we have to be enemies. I think that's
Right.
a load of crap. I
Yep.
don't think that's biblical at all.
Yep.
And so I got to beat you down until you do agree with me, or I've got to expose you because you and tear you apart because you don't agree with me.
Right.
I think that's evil in and of itself. But when you go back, Genesis 9, I think this is one of the earliest places where we can see this principle of honor being applied, and it's not only in Genesis 9; it's all throughout Scripture. But Noah builds the arky, you know, gets on the boat with all the animals. I can't imagine that smell. And it rains, floods the whole earth like it did. They get finally the rain recedes. God sends his promise of the rainbow. Awesome. Which we better get ready to preach on this in June. But what happens next is they leave the ark. The Bible says that Noah became a man of the soil. And when he became a man of the soil, one of the first things he did was he planted a vineyard. And then he made wine. And Noah got drunk on wine. Regardless of what your stance is on alcohol, the consistent biblical teaching we all agree on is to be drunk is to enter into sin.
Yep.
And so here's Noah, and it says he's drunk and naked in his own tent.
Yep.
What happens now is his son comes in, Ham. He has 3 sons that were on the ark with him, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham sees his son, or sees his father, drunk and naked. And man, there's some really wild scholarship and theology about what happened initially when he saw his dad. Let's just say, broadboard, it was shame. He saw a chance to expose his father. So he went and he gets his brothers and says, come check out what dad's doing. He's naked. His other brothers come in, and rather than looking upon the shame and nakedness of their father, they turn backwards. They walk in, they cover him with a blanket. They cover up his shame. They literally cover up his sin. Now, I'm not trying to say we're supposed to cover up sin like the Catholic Church does or did. But what I am saying is they took a step of honor. And what happens as a result of this, and this is why it's important, because there's a principle here. Ham is cursed. His descendants, before it even happens, it tells Ham's the father of the Canaanites. His descendants become the enemies of God in the land of Israel. His descendants become the people who the Israelites have to conquer and overthrow and cast out of the land so they can take their possession that God has set aside for them. Shem is the leader, and his brother Japheth, they're blessed. And from Shem come the Israelites. Comes the promise that that we have through Christ's day of salvation. God honors us when we honor each other, even in our greatest sins and our deepest grievances. And what happened here is, man, it's just a massive breakdown of honor.
So you think Mark Driscoll dishonored in this moment, and that's where the story comes from, or that's where you're relating the story? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think if I'm hearing you correctly, that we would both agree that there could have been better honor given on both sides of this.
100%. Yep.
You know,
yep. Because we both agree that Mark Driscoll could have handled that differently at the conference.
100%.
Absolutely. But what bothers me, though, Kelly, is he said he never apologized on the stage. And I got a video clip that absolutely does say he apologizes. And then what he was apologizing, and this might be an assumption, was for how he handled it. He's not sorry for what he believes. He's sorry for how he handled it. But John Lindell didn't say. He said he didn't apologize for what he was doing. And then he said he was still sinning. And I want to know what the sin is. What is the sin that Mark Driscoll is doing? He didn't go out and blast him on social media or anybody else. What he did do was call the next pastor in line, the transitional part of one of his sons, and was talking to him and trying to get him to understand where he was coming from. And then John Lindell made another assumption saying that he was only doing this to get likes and to sell his book. That's wrong, because you don't know the motive of a person. The second assumption that he said was he was deliberately trying to divide the family. Well, you don't know how do we know he was trying to divide the family? Is it division, or can it lead to division? Yes, it can, but we don't know that was his motive, is to divide the family. And then there was a third one as well. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. Those are the little things. Again, I'm not upset that John Lindell did what he did necessarily on a Sunday or on a Wednesday night if he has a problem. I feel like there were things that were out of line with what he did, trying to make it biblical. It was very scripted. He read from his notes almost 100% of the time because it was well scripted. He's a very, very good speaker, very knowledgeable. I mean, I'm not saying Mark Driscoll isn't. He's more fly at the seat of your pants, rough as a cob type kind of guy. Lindell is eloquent, right? He has a very good way to put words together. And I feel like what really should have happened at the end of the day is these two men should have gotten together and should have worked this crap out before you start taking it to everybody else.
Okay,
I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah,
I don't think there was sin there. Where was the sin? Help me understand that from your perspective. What was the sin?
Absolutely. Who was the problem between?
Who was the problem between? It's between Mark and John.
So why is he talking to John's sons?
Because his son is the next pastor in line. I can't tell you the exact answer. I'd have to ask Mark Driscoll why he called his son. But my assumption is the transition from John Lindell to his son, that's the next pastor in line. And from the conversation he read from text messages was he was basically saying, you need to figure this out. This blah, 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 blah. You're the future. You're the future. This church ain't going to go anywhere if you don't figure this out. I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of roughly what he was saying. And I think that
he said, this is your fulcrum moment. He was encouraging him to take advantage of this moment to take the leadership of the church now, which is before the planned succession. And so this is something I do think I have some insight on, just because of my background in counseling. You can see people's motivations. If I have a problem with you, Jason, I'm never calling your son to deal with it. I'm never calling your son to advise him on what to do next, unless your son calls me and says, hey, and we have no record of that. And so maybe that happened, but I don't think so.
I'm not disagreeing with the fact that he shouldn't have called the son. I'm disagreeing in the fact that John Lindell is telling us what his motives are. No one, I don't care what body language you give. I don't care anything. You don't know the motive of a person and they could be lying, and you might have a right assumption. You could be right, but it's never good to project someone's motives when you really don't know. And I don't know how you could say any different. I've been in counseling with my counselor for the last 4 years, and that is one of the biggest things that she teaches us in our counseling is the Bible even says we don't know a person's heart. Well, the motives come from the heart. We can't read the heart. And I hate when people say, well, you know my heart. No, I don't. I don't know your heart.
The fact of the matter is society wouldn't work if we didn't make some educated guesses that were occasionally wrong about somebody's motives. The fact of the matter is,
you can definitely make decisions based off of people's motives.
Well, and you don't always know everybody's motives, but you can look at their behavior and say whether or not that's safe to be around you. And we do it all the time. If you see some guy, some man going into a women's locker room or a women's bathroom, you can safely assume that he probably has some bad intentions there. And you'd be right to assume that, because your job then is to protect the women who may be your wife and daughter that may be exposed to something that's not good. Or in the kindness of your heart, you can say, oh, he just maybe went to the wrong restroom. Maybe he was blind. I don't know. My mom went to high school with a blind guy that would walk into the bathroom and go, surprise, and scare the women. He couldn't see anything, but
that's actually funny.
It is funny, but the fact
I've walked into a ladies' restroom a couple times, unbeknownst to me. One time I had a really bad headache, and I was at the mall, and I was disoriented, and I walked right in the women's restroom, went almost to the toilet, looked around, and went, "Oh my God, I'm in the women's restroom." Turned around and went right back out. But that was obviously 10 years ago.
Right, but wouldn't it have been a great thing if someone would have grabbed you and said, "Hey man, what are you doing? Where are you going in there?"
I'd have been like, I don't know. Let me get out of here.
Because and I can tell you, because I've had lots of clients that I've counseled through lots of things, including I had a guy that found himself in a similar situation. He stumbled into a bathroom, ended up being accused of peeping on some people, and it put him in a ton of legal trouble, and that he ended up being exonerated from, because he was innocent.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it have been great if someone would have grabbed that guy and said, "Hey man, don't go in there"? Would have grabbed you and said, "Hey man, don't go in there."
Yeah. No,
Or
I agree with what you're saying in that
so
regard, but to say that guy went in there deliberately to look at women versus first asking the question, hey, why are you in here? And then if he says, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be in here, we can't go, yeah, right, you were in here to look at women, you just got caught. We can't do that. We cannot
right,
do that because you don't know. You have to
right.
give the benefit of the doubt. And it's hard because
So
think about just many situations and conversations that you've had, even with your kids.
yeah,
Their motive
but
with your wife,
in this
motives of your
situation,
spouse.
it's in this situation, it is hard to gauge the motives, and I'll give you that 100%. But there's other things that happen. Number one, he takes all that stuff down and immediately starts pushing more stuff about the Jezebel spirit and giving away his book for free, which I didn't check this out. I don't know. Apparently, you could get it for free with a suggested $5 donation, $15 to ship.
Yeah.
Um, and so give away the book for free. And he also has another book coming out on masculinity, which is probably, they're both great books. The New Days Old Demons is a great book. Um, Here's the problem. In Mark's past, he's stirred controversy like this for his own gain,
But
financial
see,
gain
but I got to
in the
stop you right
past.
there because that's the problem, though. When is somebody's past the past? Why are we going to go back to the past? I mean, how many years ago was this, Kelly? 15? 20?
For
The Mars
which,
Hill? The Mars Hill
which
thing, was that 15 years ago? Where,
uh, it
you
was a
know,
long time ago. What
so,
I'm saying is it happened more than once though with him. It wasn't just the Real Marriage book.
right. But what has it
And so
happened multiple times in the last year, 2 years, 3 years? I think that's my question.
he hasn't put in any other books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have listened to Driscoll for years, ever since he kind of bust onto the scene in the early 2000s. I've preached his stuff. I've done his series. I wrote a letter of recommendation for a young man that went to his church and became one of his elders. And so I'm not as connected to what he does as I have been to James River. But I mean, we've seen this kind of thing before. Again, I don't want to throw his past in front of him at all. But when the conversation is, what's the motivation?
Yeah, but you still can't
And when you
go
look at
from
motivation,
15 years ago and then bring that up and say, well, he did this 15 years ago, so there's a likely chance that he's probably doing the same thing. That's not giving the person the benefit of the doubt. And here, let me make this clear. I'm not saying
yeah,
he is or isn't because I don't know. I think it's just wrong
yeah,
that somebody can say that is what he's doing.
and
That's
I
where
agree
John
that.
Lindell did. He said he is doing it. And I think that's wrong. You can't stand up on that stage and say for sure that is what he's doing. That's wrong.
And that's where I feel like that was a step too far on his part on
Yeah,
that side
that's
of
what I'm
things,
getting at.
because
Absolutely.
we can't, we don't have the right to judge motives. However, um, I do think I do think whenever you have a situation where you're not invited in, you've just, you're in the middle of this controversy and you start sending messages to a son who's going to be in leadership. That is sowing seeds of division.
Yep.
That's not a judgment on motives. That's just an observation.
Yep.
Sowing seeds of division is a serious problem in the life of the church.
Yep.
Go to John 17. Look at what Paul has to say about someone who sows seeds of division.
I agree.
That's something that we don't do enough. We don't teach enough on. That is a dangerous work. And
Right. But what okay.
some people would say it's
Agree.
demonic, but
But
it
now
might
you
be,
tell
that
me
might be too far.
you tell me, did John Lindell sow seeds of division by saying what Mark Driscoll's motives were against his ministry? Here's his words, were paraphrasing. If I were you and you follow Mark Driscoll, I would reconsider following him and buying his books. That's exactly what he said. Do you not think that is sowing a bad seed?
If I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, like you want me to give Mark, then I would say that he's trying to follow the teaching of Matthew 18.
But is it, but
Because
when you
because
tell
Matthew
his
18
followers,
says, he,
I would reconsider following him and buying his books. You're
I
planting
think
seed in people's minds that Mark is a bad guy.
I
And that's
think
what he shouldn't have done that.
I think what he's trying to do is follow the teaching of Matthew 18, which says, after you go to the person one-on-one, which he clearly outlined that he did. He shared the stuff where he had discussion with Jimmy Evans, which Jimmy Evans, to my knowledge, and I'll be honest with you, Jason, I have not checked this out. Like I've not been following the details that it kept coming out because I just got sick of it.
Yeah,
If Jimmy Evans has refuted that he called Mark and had these conversations, I haven't seen that.
me
So
neither.
he's talked to Jimmy Evans to bring in Mark's spiritual father, someone who would typically have reason to talk to Mark. We see Lindell going. He said specifically he talked with denominational leadership in Arizona that same weekend, and he put himself in front of the denomination. And by doing so, you said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" It opens up for that denominational leader to correct him if the denominational leader thinks he's in error. From what I've been told, Lindell has a history of responding well to correction from denominational leadership. So he's following the Matthew 18 principle. When you come to the third place in Matthew 18, if the first two things don't go, it says bring him in front of the church, which is what Lindell believed he was doing. And he said it didn't have nothing to do with him. And so he was directing the church from his perspective. Whether this is right or wrong, I think this is his perspective, to have nothing to do with him because scripture says that. Now, whenever I've walked through the Matthew 18 thing, and whenever I have done that, the reason I didn't take it before the congregation is because I took it before the elders, the leadership of my church, and to handle it in that form and fashion. I think the reason why Lindell took it to the place that he did is because it's everywhere, and the hate that was generated was so extreme that they were trying to get ahead of it. And I'll just let you know that they're still locked down up there.
I'll tell you what I think. I think Lindell got busted with the fact that he went too far. He didn't like to be called out, and so therefore he had to play damage control, and this was a way to do damage control to elevate himself above the situation, when, in my opinion, the man should have just worked it out with Mark Driscoll behind the scenes after that Saturday when they did this. I don't care who Mark texted. Mark was not on social media blasting anybody. There's nothing out there. I don't care if he was posting all his stuff again. It doesn't matter. He texted his son. He texted John Lindell. Those are the only two people he was reaching out to for whatever his reason is. They should have worked it out with Pastor Jimmy Evans and whoever else and got behind the scenes and figured this thing out. And if he wanted to go before the church to say, hey, here's what's going down. We're in talks right now. I feel this. But to go into the detail that he did with the text messages and projecting Mark as a rebellious kid who needs to repent, it's wrong. I feel it's totally wrong. You and I know you and I would not do something like that. Number one, you said it. I would just go before the elders of the church, and I've done the very same thing.
Yeah.
But we can't, the part of Matthew 18 is the person isn't repenting. Well, the only part that supposedly John Lindell is saying that he's sinning is he hasn't called to apologize for him handling it or calling his son. That's not a public thing. If you got a guy that's out there having an affair, you go to him and you say, hey, brother, you're having an affair with your wife. You need to stop. And he doesn't stop. Then you take your brother with you. Hey, bro, both of us are here because you're having an affair. You need to stop. And he says, no, I'm not stopping. Then you go in front of the church. You bring him to the board of elders. Nobody today is going to set him up on stage and roast them, although that would probably be the best thing for a lot of people. But we set him in front of the leadership of the church, the pastor, whoever it is, and we say, listen, man, if you can't repent, then you're no longer welcome here, and I'm going to let people know not to fellowship with you anymore until you repent of your affair. That's the Matthew 18 process. But the sin that John Lindell is saying that Mark is sinning is his opinion because he got butthurt over the fact that he was wrong with the performance that has gone too far. Whether he has good intentions or not, which I believe he did. I think James River is a great church. I actually am going to be there next Tuesday to the Grow Leader at James River. I don't necessarily think that John Lindell is a bad guy. I think he's a great guy. I think time's going to tell where he really is, but I think the process in which he used was to take the upper authority to make himself look like he was being in the spiritual father, spiritual, above. And that's what bothers me. That's what rubbed me wrong. We all have discernment. And I try to be very balanced. And I'm not saying I'm right. These are just my opinions, right? I'm not saying I'm the law by any stretch. I'm just my opinion.
Me either. Yeah.
Of having an open conversation with a good friend of mine where you and I, we can disagree on something and you and I can still be friends and just know that we just have difference of opinion.
So
I love having relationships like that, man. You know why? Because you're going to share things with me that I don't agree with. that are probably going to penetrate me in whether it's 6 weeks or 6 months or a year down the road. That thing may fester in me to where God starts working on me, the seed that you planted. And I may change my thought just because you pointed that out to me. It might take me a while.
Let me tell you something.
Because I'm a hard-headed, stubborn person.
We need men. As men, we need other men that can step up and say, "Hey, I think that's wrong." We need that in our life.
Yeah.
Like, Jason, if we're out, me, you, and Aaron are out, and you see me disrespecting my wife,
yeah,
I would expect and want you to come up and say, "Hey, dude, don't talk to Bridget that way."
Yep.
You know.
Likewise,
and,
yes.
You know, and the fact that I know that you're strong enough in yourself to have that conversation with me, that's huge. Yeah. One thing that we also don't know, I will point this out, and I kind of feel like we're pitted against each other. I don't think you and I are in any like huge disagreement. From what I can hear, but from what I know, Lyndall's under authority. I don't know if Driscoll is or not.
What do you, under
Lyndall has?
What do you mean exactly? Help me understand. Because of the assemblies.
Because of the assemblies.
Okay.
Because he did talk to those people who are over and people who have corrected him in the past.
Mm-hmm. But ultimately, who gives us that authority?
I hear what you're saying.
I mean, if you're a pastor of the church, you don't answer to men. That's what I can't stand about boards, man. A pastor is you go back. I know, but you're saying that Lyndall is in authority because of the assemblies of where he's at. They put him in that. Is that what you mean?
He's under authority.
Okay, that's what I mean. I'm sorry. I said it the wrong way.
He has. I think if you don't have somebody in your life that can tell you no, stop, and then you listen, you're in trouble.
So,
right. And I'm not talking about your wife. We don't need mommy nursemaids as wives. I'm talking about another man,
right?
A spiritual father in your life,
yes,
that can give you that kind of guidance and direction. You have to have that. I'm gonna tell you,
like you have with your executive team. Yeah, your executive team does that.
Yeah. You need that. You have that. I need that. Yep. I have it. I don't know. I don't know who those people are for Mark. I do know from listening to John Lyndall that he went and talked to those people. Mm-hmm. You know, and whether we come down to the same conclusion on this, anybody listening to this needs to hear this right now. You need someone who can tell you, shut up, stop thinking that way because you're being stupid. Because sometimes I'm a man and I'm stupid. I do things and say things that after they come out of my mouth, I wish I could get them back. But in my pride, I keep my mouth shut so I don't look worse.
Yep.
That's just flesh. And we've all got to deal with that. And if you don't have that going on, especially in church leadership, you're walking in dangerous ground. And from what I heard, what I gathered, Lyndall put himself through the paces on that. And I would disagree that he was narcissistic in that approach. I do think he was agitated. I do think that he was reacting out of a sense of protection and the protector coming out of him on that. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say. Do I think that he did it perfectly? No. Do I think that we ought to be talking about someone's motives? No. Mm-hmm. I think it should have been couched as this is what I think may have been going on, rather than this is 100% what his motives are. Yeah. Because what I haven't heard is there's somebody from John Lyndall's side that has now attacked Mars Hill that way. And the way you prevent that kind of a thing from happening is you don't use language that becomes inflammatory. We are, you and I as pastors, men who speak to hundreds of people every week, the Bible says we're going to be held responsible for our words.
Yep.
And that's
dangerous,
to know,
man. Think about that level of responsibility.
It's huge. That's why it says not everybody should teach. You know, this is a big deal. Yeah. And so when I think about that's why I'm so careful about what I say. I don't want to be so careful about what I say that I don't speak truth.
Right.
But there comes a point where you have to say, what is the weight of my words? You know what? I wish would have happened. I wish Driscoll would have instead of bringing the exposure in front of 11,000 guys that morning, I wish he would have pulled him to the side. That's what Driscoll himself said. I should have talked to you about this first.
Yeah. Okay, let's ask
this
question.
That would have happened.
Let's say Driscoll does pull him to the side, and John Lyndall says, I disagree with you. So Mark Driscoll says, well, then I'm not speaking. And then later, Mark Driscoll comes out and says, hey, I've approached this situation, and they don't believe this, but I'm going to give what I feel. I still don't think anything's wrong with that.
It would be so.
If
So
you
had
feel so, as a person, just supposed is when is it? When is a person supposed to spiritually strongly stand for something that's evil and not be against authority? Because Jesus did not allow the Pharisees to dictate to him what he said under their spiritual authority.
hold
And
on a second.
I know he's Jesus and all, but still, when it was
That
wrong, he called it out.
when you're Jesus, who has perfect opinion and all spiritual authority, you get to do that. He sets the standard that the rest of us have to try to live up to.
Yeah, but he
However,
did it. He set the standard. He called him
so
out. So that's what I'm asking.
let's-
What do you think? If he would have done it behind the scenes, wouldn't come out and speak, and then later he told everybody why I didn't agree with this performance. I think it was evil. I think it was Jezebel's spirit. I talked to Pastor Lindell about it. He disagreed with me, and that's why I didn't speak at the conference. We need to be aware of the Jezebel spirit. Blah 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 blah. Would you be okay with that? Or would you think
he
that?
probably would have. I think he probably would have been out of order in some places. But let's look at the bigger picture. The thing that caught everybody's attention on this was Driscoll kicked off stage for calling out Jezebel's spirit.
Yeah.
No. Driscoll kicked off stage for speaking against male stripper. Well, there's a lot of things that were wrong about all of that.
Yeah.
How cool would it have been if Driscoll would have pulled him aside and said, "Hey, I think this," and then Lindell says, "No, I disagree." Mark says, "Okay, I'm not going to speak," and then he moves forward. I don't think it has near the splash. If he put something out later without the disruptive piece, without the Driscoll thrown off stage, without that, I don't think it's near as big a black eye to the church.
Yeah, but I'm just in general, because a lot of people said that Mark handled it wrong. So if he had handled it the way everybody thinks, would they have been okay with Mark still calling it out after the fact? And I'm telling you, I don't think he would have been okay with it. I think John Lennon will be going through the same stuff he is now because he's gone against him and his church.
I don't
And
think
that's
it would
the
be near
problem.
the level.
Where is the stoppage on what we call evil when it needs to be evil, or maybe not even evil, but uncalled for? Think of Transformation Church for a minute last year, Easter.
Right.
Are we not supposed to call out Michael Todd for what he did? Or the next pastor? Or, even John MacArthur's another one that gets really extreme with his situations. Where is it that somebody's not supposed to say something about that? We should be holding each other accountable. And if it's not biblical, well, then it'll die. And that's what we're going to see in the next 6 months to a year. We're going to see where everything falls 6 months to a year with these two men.
Absolutely. I think we're going to see it, and I think we'll be surprised with what we see. I think
it's just a messed up situation. I mean, it's sad that we're even having to talk about it, truthfully.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love it.
I think so. One of my previous mentor, Bishop Tony Miller, said at the kingdom of heaven, the doors swing on the hinge of relationships. Everything is based on relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to call John MacArthur out on social media because I don't know John MacArthur. I'm probably not going to call Mike Todd out because I don't know Mike Todd.
Yeah, but when you put yourself out there on social media, you are asking for someone to call you out. That's the risk you take with putting yourself out into the public. If you don't want that, then don't put it out there. But when you are a influencer at whatever level that is, just be ready for someone to call you out. And you got to be okay with that. That doesn't mean get in line with my spiritual authority. This is my church and I'm the spiritual authority and you're in sin and you need to call. Bullcrap. You put yourself out there. You made it public. Get ready for the crap coming your way, whether you like it or not.
I still think we have to follow. I still think we have to follow Scripture. No, I still think we have to follow Scripture, man. I think that's to me, in my life and where I'm going to go, I want to look and see what Scripture has to say. And I believe that we have a lot of problems today because we choose not to do that. Honor is an essential biblical principle, and without honor, the church cannot flourish. We have too many examples of people in the church choosing to do something that is less than honorable, that has caused a black eye on the church and a black eye on their ministry. And if we would just stop and pause and go to the point of honor, I think it would be better. I don't know Mike Todd. I don't know a single person that was in service with with Mike Todd whenever that happened. But when I've had conversations with people, I have a heartfelt conversation that says, hey, this is what I genuinely think. The other part of it is we have so many assumptions that we make that we put out there. And when we put them out there with passion, they sound like gospel truth. And what happens when you're wrong passionately and you put it out there? To me, the argument that says once you put an idea out there, it's open for anybody's opinion. Well, it doesn't mean that opinion's correct. It doesn't mean that people are right. And in the situation with Driscoll and this thing, he accused this guy of being a stripper. Was he a stripper? I don't know. I've seen articles and evidences that says he was never a stripper, but he was a go-go dancer. What's the difference? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, John Lindell also said he had kids and he don't.
Again, where does he get his information?
That's a good question. Know. That's why do you go into all that detail when you don't know? He looks like an idiot saying that he had kids when the guy says, no, did you see the video?
No.
Alex Magala come out. Hey, I just want to clear something up. James River, love you, man. It was such a great time, but I want to let you know I don't have kids, not now, not yet. And he also said he's really not a Christian. His God is whenever he gets to the place of the sword being jammed down in his belly. I mean, there's little things there. The guy came out and posted the video talking about this. That's the next hot one that came out. Alex Magala, whatever his name is, came out to clarify what John Lindell said on stage, that some of that was not true. One, him being a Christ follower, and two, having kids. That's dangerous. This is why you don't get into the details. I call it the weeds. When you get into the weeds, you get chiggers. You get ticks. You know what I'm saying? It's best to stay out of the weeds.
Yeah, I can tell you for certain, and maybe people think I look foolish in this, but I don't really care. But I can tell you for certain that I know the kid who Lindell mentions hearing Alex Magala sharing his faith with at the airport. I know the kid who listened to him do that.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to say, this is true, and then find out that you were lied to. That's another thing. Maybe Lindell needs to come out and say, hey, this is what we were led to believe. I don't know. There's too many of us who haven't been fed a lie that we believed and found out later it was not true.
Which brings me back to the first point of the whole thing. This is why John Lindell should have never given the details. That's all I'm getting at. It was too far with the details. I think if he has the right to do what he did at his church, to say, hey, this is where we're at. This is what's going on. Mark and I have not come to an agreement. I've called Jimmy Evans. It's not working. We are going to figure this thing out, but I'm doing Matthew 18, in my opinion, yada, yada, yada. But to give all of those details is where it becomes very dangerous in many facets. One, you had the wrong information. Two, you talked about motives. Three, there's narcissistic tendencies. I'm not saying he is. I'm saying there are red flags of narcissism, control, manipulation, love bomb, those types of things. And I would never say he is, because I don't know. I'm not around him to know that stuff, and neither one of us.
Every one of those points could be said back about Driscoll as well. I mean, and that's the other problem with this. Narcissism is a difficult thing for us to throw around. I think we can look at the tendencies that are out there, but we need to be a lot more careful with how we throw around that word. I have 2 master's degrees that teach me how to discuss narcissism, whether somebody is one of those or not. I think that word gets thrown around to insult and tear somebody down, or to make. I'm not saying you're doing this, Jace, but a lot of people get hurt with that word without understanding the magnitude of what it can mean.
Yeah.
To say that someone has narcissistic tendencies versus being a narcissist, which is a personality disorder defined by the DSM, are 2 different things. But we don't realize that in the lexicon. And it may just be my ears, because when people use these terms that have general definable meanings that go in your medical chart, I hear them differently.
Okay, let me ask you this: is narcissism a learned trait, or is it an inherited thing from a person's personality?
Well, this is another discussion. It's a long one.
No. It's not long. They either learn the behavior, or they're just naturally that way. Which one is it?
You're asking the question: is it nature or nurture? Here's what I believe. there are no, I'm telling you, this is a long discussion. There are no conclusive evidence on this because it's very difficult to
Well,
understand.
I can send you
I've been
about
in,
3 different articles from PhD people of psychologists that'll tell you that narcissism is a learned trait. And you want to know how we get it? Lack of discipline. Kids
I think,
are growing up to be more narcissistic because the world revolves around them. They learn that when their parents try to make them happy and successful, and they don't become happy and successful, and we protect them from everything in the world, and we don't allow them to go through life. We don't allow them to suffer. We don't allow them to go through problems because we fix everything for them. Then when they become adults, they think that's the way the world's supposed to be, and they learn those narcissistic traits, and they become narcissists. I've read 3. I don't have to have a PhD or a master's degree to know that. I mean, there's enough articles out there to tell you that it's a learned behavior.
hey, Jace, this is probably a place that I can conclusively say that I probably have a little more information than you, and I'm not saying that pridefully. But when you look at the scope of the
But
literature,
you can't throw your
it's
master's
divided.
degree. You can't throw your master's degree at me to sit there and tell me that a narcissist. You do have more knowledge than I do. I don't have a problem saying that. You do have knowledge. That's why I come to you with things
Right.
like this. There's no doubt. I want to make that very clear. But at the same time, I don't prefer when people throw their master's degree to make a point. Just make the point. Just make the point. You're smart. You know that.
This is why I'm trying to say it's a longer discussion because there are people that are born with certain tendencies. Jason, you and I are both more aggressive in life, and we both are married to women who are less aggressive in life. We both know women who are more aggressive than our wives and men who are less aggressive than us. Some of those tendencies do not come out of the way we were raised. It's part of our hard wiring. I believe and this is where I want to get to. I believe about 30%, and this is my take after reading books, watching videos, reading current research, as well as research that I've studied over the last 20 years since I've gotten this degree, or roughly 20 years. I believe it's about 30% nature, that you have some predispositions because of how you're wired, and about 70% nurture, the ways that you have been failed. And so when I say that, and when I say it's not a quick discussion, I've put a lot of time into this, so I can't make it a quick discussion. I believe
But you
that
did. You said it. 70-30, right?
But that's to say this also is true. If you have a 30% aspect of this that's part of your nature, that doesn't. I think you can learn some things to help you be aware of the tendencies you have. A lot of aspects. So when you look at the MMPI, which is Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, which is what we use to do clinical diagnostic work, we can understand how people are wired and why they do what they do based on the consistency of this test. It is the gold standard for courts right now. And when we see this, there's going to be certain aspects of who we are that is hardwired into us from birth at a certain level. However, it's not completely something that is unovercomable. You can't overcome it if you're not aware of it. So you can go through therapy, you can have help, you can have good discipline, but there's still going to be some people that have some issues. For instance, I can tell you right now, I have a long experience dealing with people that have committed crimes that go into the criminal justice system, and they've come from great families who provided an appropriate level of discipline. No one does it perfectly, but they do it good enough, and their kids still have these issues because there's hardwired stuff into them that they choose to get into. Is it a lack of character on their part? 100% it's a lack of character on their part. And some kids have very poor impulse control from early on. There's clinical studies. Now that there's so many things I want to say here.
I've opened up a can, haven't I? I've gotten the passion come out of you.
For me, I do have some passion. We have to be responsible for ourselves. This stuff about, well, I'm just born this way is malarkey.
Right.
God can change anything. If we want to give ourselves in submission to Him, we can do that. But there are some things we got to take care of.
Do you believe a full-blown narcissist can actually change?
It's very difficult.
I know it is. I do believe that God can do anything. You and I, we believe that God, with the miracle of God, that person can change. But the only way, in my opinion, that person can change is a miracle of God. No
That's
amount of
100%.
no amount of counseling and all that will help them if they're full-blown narcissists, for sure. That's the crazy
I
thing about
agree.
that, man. It's an evil thing. It's
It
so
is an
much
evil thing.
pride. I mean, we both know that pride is the number one deadly sin that leads to most all other sins.
Yeah.
And narcissism is nothing but pride. That's the devil, right?
And
The
let's just talk
devil
about
is a freaking narcissist.
Yeah, let's just talk about this. Let's just talk about this. If you live in North America, if you are Western in your philosophy like we are,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to have much higher proclivity to be a narcissist or have narcissistic tendencies, strong narcissistic tendencies in your life
Yep.
because of the culture that we live in.
Yep.
And
Me,
there's
me.
some of the things, yes, and some of those things, Jace, are things that we value. Like, I can do it. I have confidence. I can get stuff done. When you look at Eastern cultures, and you have people that are more collectively minded. I am not a socialist or anything like that. I'm talking about Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
You're talking about. I live in this tiny village, and I have to depend on Jason because he raises really good sheep. My wife makes really good clothes, and so I'm going to take your wool with her skill, and we're going to do something that benefits us both. When you live with that mentality, rather than I can do everything myself,
Yep.
it changes things. Our American independence.
Very good. It's very good.
Raises our natural proclivity to fall into narcissism, and it's dangerous. However, it's also dangerous to think, well, I can't do anything. I can't change my circumstances. I can't work hard, get a job.
The way I was born,
for my family.
Born on the wrong side of the tracks. It's just my family genes. Yep, you're right.
Everybody has something they've got to overcome. The biggest issue, and I think this is where we absolutely 110% agree, is if you don't have God in your life, you're not going to change the bad stuff at all. You're not going to become the person that you should be. You're not going to have a life that God wants you to have or that you even want to have. You're going to just keep doing the same old broken stuff that's been following your family around for generations, and you're going to stay stuck
which is the generational curse.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Man, that's good. I love what you said about that, because our culture, for sure, in the Western side of things, it's me. I mean, the me movement with women. I don't need a man. I can do this all on my own. That's destroyed the family. It's the enemy's. It's the enemy's tactics, man. It's what he wants. He wants to destroy. This nation is not a Christian nation. We know that. But it is founded on Christian values. And so we are going to be more attacked here than anywhere else, because obviously you go to the Middle East, it's not about Christianity at all. You got Muhammad, you got Hinduism, you got a lot of different religions. And so I think in this regard, we're going to see a lot more attack on the family, on the human being. And listen, this is a great discussion. I need to have you on a little bit more often when we get into these things, man. I love talking about stuff like this.
And when it comes to all this stuff, man, I'd love to be on that. We're buddies, man, and we're brothers more than anything.
Brothers.
There's a difference between a buddy and a brother. You're a brother. Brothers go to war. Buddies walk away.
I would go to war with you any day, especially in the social, political, and biblical things of this life.
Absolutely.
You and me would be arm in arm no matter what.
But let's just say this. Back to the social media thing. Dude, okay?
Yeah.
It's way better to have those conversations face to face than through your stupid keyboard. I agree. I think you can put something out there. You can do whatever you want to. It's way better to have that conversation face to face. I promise you, it was better for race in America whenever people had conversations with someone of another race rather than just putting up a black square on their social media.
Yep. Totally
ridiculous
agree.
To think that would make some sort of a change.
I know.
Get to know somebody.
Exactly. Get out and have a conversation.
Yes.
Dude, that's true, man. It's good. This is what we're doing. We're just making people aware, trying to help people understand and have conversations, and sometimes hard conversations, but you got to have them. That's what makes us better. That's the whole iron sharpening iron, man. That's what you and I are doing right now. We're sharpening one another.
Right.
Listen, it's already been an hour. Can you believe it's been an hour? Some people can't handle this. What's going on with that noise?
Dude,
you over there, your stomach, you hungry? Or is it just me hearing that? Kinsey, do you
Man, it's raining like crazy here. Is it coming through from me? It's raining like crazy here. I'm surprised I have internet.
Well, you were sound like a computer just a couple times, but it wasn't enough to not hear you. Listen, man, I
AI.
Absolutely, appreciate you coming on, man, and giving your input. And I want everybody to know that Kelly Rhoades is definitely educated when it comes to the psychology of human beings and counseling. And this dude has been through a lot of classes, and not only the classes, Kelly, or the education, but also experience, which to me is where you really get it, is when you actually go through it. And then on top of that, you're a pastor, which you have to deal with all this crap at the same time. So I just appreciate you, man. I love your heart. I love your thoughts. And I don't think at all you and I 100% disagree on things. I think we have differences in areas, and that's okay. We both can be okay with that because that's just that's just who we are. But at the end of the day, you and I love God. We love people. And we want nothing but the best for people, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to help people, man. Trying to help people.
Absolutely. 100%.
So listen, I would love to have you on again. Maybe we can do it in a couple months. If you're cool with that, I'll reach out to you and do it again. I'm looking forward to your men's conference. So before we go, I know right now we're looking at a couple of dates for your men's conference, but what the listeners need to know is it's in August. It's either going to be the first or the second weekend of August. Can you just briefly kind of share a little bit about that, your heart behind it, and maybe kind of what you're wanting the men to know, that anybody can come to it, and then tell them where it's going to be?
Yeah, the conference is going to be at Life Point Church here in Lebanon. It's a Friday, Saturday event. Our whole goal is to bring men together to glorify God and to live on purpose with the conviction of who God's called us to be. This year, our main speaker is going to be none other than you, Jason Gaszak. And I am so excited because I want to bring a man in who's passionate about living his faith out in the public sphere. Someone who's not afraid to talk about Jesus, not afraid to talk about what's right and wrong, according to biblical standards, not just your own opinion or some stupid social justice thing. But we're going to talk about what does Scripture actually say and what is God actually calling us to, and how can we be the kind of men that God's called us to be. So it's going to be early August. We're going to be putting that out here real soon as we kind of get that thing nailed down. But I believe it's time for men to stand up. Now, anybody can come to this thing, but it's focused on the men. It's time for men to stand up. We want you to bring your sons. Dads, your sons need to see you stand up being a biblical example of what it means to live the truth of the gospel out in every aspect of your life. That's what the Brotherhood Men's Conference is all about. That's why we're bringing in Jason. We're going to have amazing worship. There's going to be a lot of other fun things going on, and you don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great event. So be watching our page, Life Point Lebanon, social media stuff. All that's going to be out there. We can't wait to be there. If you have any questions, send them to us. info@lifepointlebanon.com. We'll get you all the answers.
Love it, man. I'm so excited to be a part of it, and I'm going to try to work. I know we have our men's meeting, men's breakfast on one of those weekends as well. That's what we're trying to figure out. But I might even just try to figure out a way that we can just maybe even bring our guys from our area down there and attend this thing, man. Get our guys around some other men as well.
That'd be awesome.
So let's work these details out. The main thing is we're going to be talking about manly things, and we're going to protect. We're not doing anything crazy that I'm aware of as far as, doing entertainment to bring people in. You know what we're going to do? We're going to give word of God, and we're going to have relationships, and that's what we're going to bring it back to.
100%.
I'm glad to be doing that. I think that's what we got to get back to, Kelly. Just worship and word, man. Worship and word. Let's leave the entertainment outside of the church, and let's bring in worship and word every week to the people.
That's what we're on the same page there, brother.
So, listen, man, love you. Thank you so much for joining me. And
love you too,
all you listeners, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next week. You're listening to Unfiltered right here in Rhoades Church.